Hello, Mark. Thank you for inviting me on the show. My name is Simon Garvey. I'm Reform UK Prospective Parliamentary candidate for Skipton and Ripon. School teacher, business owner, and even though getting old in years, I'm still a keen sportsman. To tie that with politics, I'm going to quote Bill Paisley, the old Liverpool manager. I'm going to take a bit of creative license with this as well. Politics, like football, is a simple game made complicated by fools. With that in mind, our message to Skipton and Ripon is simple. We will scrap net zero energy and replace it with net zero immigration. By doing this, the economy will have a quick upturn and the public sector will have stress taken from it. For example, NHS frontline staff in hospitals and GP surgeries, schools will have class sizes at maintainable levels, and the need for housing on Greenbelt will be significantly reduced.
Simon, what a wonderful beginning of your pitch in your political career. Thank you so much for joining me on the Sutherland Report. It's lovely to meet you via this digital medium. And I love that reference to Bob Paisley, one of the most, if not the most famous football manager that's ever been in this country, 50 years with Liverpool Football Club. So we give a hat tip to someone who really spoke a lot of common sense at times and was a joy to listen to, who never suffered falls. But thank you for that. Come on, you're not that old. What's the sport you're now playing that's very, very famous, I think, in Yorkshire with that?
Yeah, thanks, Mark. I used to play a lot of football when I was younger, but it's cricket nowadays, so I'll just play for my local village team.
Brilliant. The game of gentlemen, yes, or the game that is played by gentlemen that come from Yorkshire. So I'll underline that. Let's start off with a bit of geography. I'll get some maps up, and then we can describe where your the constituency is in regard to the United Kingdom. As I often say, and this is important, especially as viewers around the world may see this, is that our country fits into Texas 2.5, 2 3/4 times. That's just in one state in America. And we have 68 million people that live in the UK. There are less than 68 million people, in Texas. So there you go. So here we go. Here's our first map. Maybe you could talk us through this.
Skipton and Ripon is a very large constituency in North Yorkshire.
Right. And let's get to this one. This is the boundaries.
And, it's got a voting population of as you can see on the map, it stretches all the way from Lancashire in the west to Richmond in the north and South Yorkshire in the south. So Brilliant. It's a large area with a sparse.
This helps pitch it as well. This helps pitch it, yeah, because it's showing, as you said, from west to east, so to speak, right? So it's a very large constituency. Simon, kicking off from a couple of things that you have raised, and you raised one of my favourite subjects, this whole thing of net zero, right? And we're all worried about CO2. Simon, unless I was wrong, I always thought that my science and biology taught this, and I was a huge fan of David Bellamy. And CO2 is taken in by trees, and trees then make a very special gas that we all need called oxygen. So that's the first thing. So
photosynthesis.
Right, photosynthesis. Thank you. So when we talk about net zero, where is that taking our society to? What will then happen to our society?
Yeah, well, I think impoverishing the people of Skipton and Ripon on the old term net zero is a very, very foolhardy task. One, because the science is being questioned more and more by a number of different esteemed people. And two, the amount of CO2 that the UK actually produces is dwarfed to developing nations in Southeast Asia. China and Russia, they're pumping out more CO2 than we will do in 10, 20, 30 years every single year.
And we have to remind ourselves, don't we, that China is building a new coal-fired station virtually every 2-3 weeks. This is what they're doing in regard to their economy. So you also, the big thing and the big discussion that you will have on the doorstep, hence why you've raised those issues. You've already talked about class sizes being unmanageable and needing them to be manageable because of immigration, which is a national issue into this country. So what about, and we raised this, what are the demands on the National Health Service in your area at the moment? How do people get to see a GP? What are the waiting times like, etc.?
Yeah, well, in my canvassing, Mark, lots and lots of people are struggling to find GP appointments, and it's almost impossible to get consecutive appointments with the same GP. This can be attributed to increasing the population by 600,000 to 1 million people every single year. Doing that, you're going to flood the system. Reform UK offers solutions in utilising the private sector more as a release valve. So, for example, if you can't see a GP within 3 days, Reform UK will make sure that you see a private consultant free of charge.
Right. Okay. Well, that sounds very interesting. So, do you think some of this overload in regard to seeing your GP, going to the surgery, has that overload been caused by the fact that people are ill, they go to see their GP, they don't feel satisfied, and then they might have to make a number of trips until they actually are then seen to, or it goes to another stage? Is that happening in your area?
Oh, definitely, Mark. So the GPs are overwhelmed. What tends to happen, what's been reported to me, is the first consultation is very generic. It's basically, it doesn't really go in depth into the problems or the symptoms. It's just there to get a baseline of what's happening. Trouble is, when people have to keep going back over and over again, then it causes a problem because, one, people a lot of the time are in pain during this process, and two, if they need vital treatment or operations or a scan, then basically they're losing time in the fight against disease. So, yeah, the GPs are completely overwhelmed, so it's understandable. And into the private sector.
Right. Simon, you're raising a very important issue there, which is the amount of, as I've alluded to, the amount of times that patients have got to go and see a doctor, but before it can then progress. And sadly, if they are in pain, then they're waiting X amount of time with that pain, and in between time, the particular disease may be getting worse at that time. And this is profoundly important within the constituency of, which is one of the largest in the UK. Are there enough hospitals, do you think? Are there some infrastructure projects that need to be built within the constituency?
Well, definitely. So in Ripon, we've got at certain hours, and it's only available for a very small number of treatments. In Ripon, they've recently merged a lot of the GP practices into one because, again, they can't really keep the doctors on the books. The workload is unreasonable. So a lot of the doctors are leaving the profession and either moving abroad or moving into the private sector. So in Ripon, we've had 2 or 3 general practices merge into one. That means it's more difficult to get an appointment. And with same-day targets for getting the appointment, it means you've got to ring up in the morning. A lot of the time, you're now competing against more people for a limited number of doctors in one practice. So yeah, the problem is only getting worse and worse. Unfortunately, under Labour, I can see honestly the NHS starting to buckle in a big way.
So, of course, within your constituency, which, as we've said, virtually goes to the west coast, but going over to the east coast, and at time, it's rural. There is a lot of challenges as well, isn't there, logistically? When you were talking about school class sizes, what is the average class size? Are you looking at 30 from your teaching experience? Are you within, say, secondary, within primary? Are you looking at 30, 35, 40 in a class?
We're approaching 40. From my experience, it depends on the location, so the density of the population. I think in some schools, definitely it's over 30 most of the time. Again, depending on the area. You go to other schools and they're very, very selective and they control the numbers very tightly. But again, with an increasing population, if we keep increasing by 600,000, 700,000, 800,000, I think in the future it won't be uncommon to see 40 in a class. One of the other problems I've had as well is this having small room sizes, small classrooms with a large number of people. So you could get 35 teenagers in a small space. That could cause obviously problems with the teaching and learning process.
Right.
To be honest, Mark, my main problem with the education system in Skipton and Ripon is the teaching of protected characteristics in primary school. For those unfamiliar with the concept, it's gender reassignment, sexual orientation, sex, being taught to Key Stage 1 to 4-year-olds and 5-year-olds. Ofsted are failing schools in Skipton and Ripon because they're not teaching protected characteristics to a high enough level to young children. In my opinion, the children should be left alone, out of the politics, out of the social engineering, should just be left alone to be children. Reform UK.
I fully agree, and even after, I fully agree with you. And even after the excellent cash report, we've got some people in this country that still won't recognise that, or they're arguing over that. And as you quite rightly point this out, and even though you haven't mentioned this, the fact that puberty blockers to be stopped by the NHS and all this kind of thing. I mean, I don't know about you, but in many ways, I can't believe that we're even having to have this conversation. But
yeah, exactly. Well, Reform UK, the only party that have pledged in their contract to ban protected characteristics and other very left-wing ideologies within the classroom.
Is that excuse me? Is that a discussion that you are finding with people, that people on the doorstep, so to speak, other friends of yours, people you're meeting in your street? Is that part of the lexicon of the discussion?
Well, people are unaware about it, Mark. So I think it comes under an umbrella of British values. And the British values are very different to protected characteristics. Protected characteristics, people don't know that this has been taught to their children in school. I've actually written to the Department for Education about the issue, and their response back to me was Tory MPs set the national curriculum. So we're getting all this radical left-wing ideology being taught to them. They're not preserving the UK's culture. They're not preserving our history. They're not preserving the UK's traditions.
The fact that you've written to the Department of Education is commendable. The fact that, as you say, whether you get an answer that you want, unless they're battening it up, food chain. I mean, in many ways, we can't quite believe that under a supposed conservative government that has been in power for 14 years, and the whole thing of conservative means to conserve, not be some, basically liberal, any idiot where anything goes. And I this is just my personal opinion, hence why you are running for reform.
Well,
There's been such a lot of duping and people have been really let down. How do you feel about that? Right.
yeah, definitely. Well, at the moment, there's no difference between the Tories and Labour. If Labour do get into power, then they'll be implementing the same things within schools, just more openly. So the Tories are doing it covertly. They're doing it in a secret, very low-key manner. Labour will probably promote it, saying it's a good thing. Like I said before, Reform UK are the only political party that will ban protected characteristics
Mm.
and before leave the innocent childhoods, and perhaps when they reach secondary school age, that's the time when they can start discussing these concepts when they're a bit more mature. But 4 or 5 year olds being introduced to these concepts, a lot of people, when I talk to them on the doorstep, are shocked, and they actually have to go Google and check it for themselves because they don't believe me half the time.
It's fascinating, isn't it? I mean, because that's what the whole COVID thing in many ways did, where suddenly the children are at home, they may be having Zoom meetings with their teachers, and then they're finding out what they're actually being taught. Is very much, it's been quite accelerated over the last 10 years, and it's shocking. So that is a good thing that this has been exposed, is actually then being able to do something about it. And we've all got that challenge. So, Simon, you began your pitch at the beginning. We've covered immigration, in one sense, or the demands of that, the strain of that on public services. You talked about the population increase. You're then talking about the strain on NHS, doctor's surgery, and classrooms. Now, my understanding is that your constituency has one of the lowest unemployment rates. When we looked that up, what are the main employers in your constituency, and what could you do to bring even more employment to your area?
Yeah, okay. So we have a wide range of professions, going from the working class, going from the farmers, going from the labourers up to high-level businesses that trade worldwide. So we've got a wide range of roles available. And like you say, there's very, very low unemployment. To increase job opportunities within the region, we will obviously set up new trade deals, implementing Brexit to its full extent. So we'll open up the markets for farming, for business, with countries outside the EU, which haven't really traditionally been Japan. That's an economy that's very, very open to new trade. We've got the Commonwealth countries too. So basically, it offers new opportunities to farmers and to businesses as well.
What percentage of your constituency do you think actually voted for Brexit in 2016? What percentage?
It was approximately 53%.
Right. So 53%, just over
3%
half.
overall.
Right.
To leave the EU for Brexit.
Simon, what's the sort of, if we were to measure how angry people feel about the state of things in the country, I'm sorry to use the word anger. I'm just disillusioned and fed up and feeling disempowered. All of those words rolled into one. What percentage do you think that you are actually looking at in your constituency?
Okay, there's going to be a very low Tory turnout for voting between Labour and the Lib Dems. So traditionally, for the past 100 years, as the constituencies evolved between Skipton and Ripon, for 100 years it's been Tory. At the last election in 2019, Julian Smith, the Tory MP, won by about 20,000 votes. He got 60% of the vote, and Labour got about 20%. The polls are now saying that's going to flip. They've got Labour as odds-on favourites to take over the seat, which is unheard of. Me, as prospective candidates, I came to the role when Reform were in single digits polling, so 8-9%. In the time that I've been doing the job, roughly a year, I've taken me and in our team, I've got some really fantastic activists. We've taken the poll numbers up to 17%. We're aiming for 20% because at 20%, that's when Tory voters start to think a vote for the Tory party is a vote for Labour. And that's when votes to Reform UK start to
I just want to say we will continue our discussion, but there is a delay, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you very much for bearing with us. We've just had council elections within England. What was the council election turnout, do you think? I'm not trying to catch you out with figures, but I think this is all. If you do know this is very relevant. Was the turnout very low in the council elections that have just happened?
It was relatively low, yeah. Everyone basically would expect a Tory mayor to be elected for North Yorkshire. We didn't get that. We got Labour mayor. So again, the writing is on the wall for the Tories. A vote for the Tory party at the general election is a vote for Labour. You're going to have to come to Reform UK sooner or later. If it's not this election, Labour, when they get in, I believe they'll make you poor, they'll make you cold, they'll make you hungry. And when your spirit has been broken, then you'll come to Reform UK. So you've got a choice. You can come in the next election in a few months, or you can come in 4 years when you're suffering financially and in lots of different other ways as well.
No, I hear you. I hear you. Simon, you're laying out your stall brilliantly, explaining to people, what you want to achieve and why you want to represent the constituency and the concerns of that. And I wish you well within that. So we don't know when the election's going to be called, but we do know that it's got to be called by the end of January or January 2025. You have really got your work cut out. So does that mean that every weekend or a number of evenings you're out there trying to meet people? Does it mean that in time there's group meetings you've got to try and set up, because you've got to get around quite a big constituency?
Yeah, well, that's right. So when I took over the role approximately 12 months ago, we did have meetings across different constituencies, and we formed a fantastic team. Basically, we had to split into two because of the geography. So I've got activists in Ripon, and I've got a fantastic team of activists in Skipton as well. So basically, we split the constituency in half. Me and the team are doing the east side, and my fantastic team in Skipton are covering the west side. To date, we've delivered over 20,000 leaflets across Skipton, Ripon, and outlying villages which is a fantastic achievement, really, for the
Wow.
limited number of people we've got in such a short space of time. And that's why we're rising in the polls so dramatically. So, like I said, we started at 9%, and now we're 17, 18, 19%. So, you know, we're really committed to the cause. And all I can say is thank you to my team, really. To me, are just regular people who are dismayed at the Tory party failure. So they want to stand up and they want to make a difference to make Britain great again. So thank you to my activists.
What about transport links? What about rail links there? What about bus services as well? Have they been reduced, cut? The amount of trains available? What are your comments on that infrastructure within your constituency?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, well, the train system, the nearest stations are Harrogate and York and Leeds, so we don't really have the train really. For the buses, obviously, public transport is struggling throughout the country. And coming back to NHS hospitals, one of my constituents actually told me that she had to go to the GP surgery on a regular basis, and the NHS was paying for her taxi fare to and from the appointment. So what is in really that the NHS is having to fork out 20, 30, 40 pounds a time just to get patients from their home to the surgery and back again. The buses, etc., all over the country, you know, as we all know, they're on the decline, and the whole public transport is it's really, really struggling to fulfill its needs and its demand and its requirements.
So you're talking in her case the cost of 30, 40 pounds of a private taxi to take her from her home to the hospital and then back again.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow. So there is of course, you know, transport around the country is a huge issue for us. So Simon, is there any specific local issue? What about sports facilities? What about, I mean, you play the wonderful game of cricket. Are there access to swimming pools? Are there access to tennis courts? What about that side of things that of course help people's health and hopefully stop them then being a strain on the NHS? What about those kinds of things?
Okay, well, I'll give the county councils the due. I mean, they're very, very good at maintaining the sporting facilities. In Ripon, there's a new swimming pool that's been opened at the leisure centre. More than meets the requirements. I think health-wise, with sporting facilities, the local authority, local governments are doing a very, very good job at providing access to the majority of the people in Skipton and Ripon. So
you've got access to swimming pools and stuff like that. You've got public amenities along those lines. No, well, that's very important. I mean, learning to swim, particularly for children, is a real art form. And a dear friend of mine explained to me the other day that I think there could be 4 or 5 deaths a week in this country because of drowning, which is absolutely horrifying. But it is an important skill. So, Simon, is there anything else that you would like to explain about you? What other concerns that you have within your constituency and what you want to address?
Yeah, well, I've been very, very negative about immigration for the whole of the interview. I'm not against immigration. I'm not anti-immigration. If it's done in a controlled way where we meet specific needs in the job market, it's a very, very positive thing on society. It's common sense, really, that if you keep importing unlimited numbers of people into the country, infrastructure is going to collapse. If we if we collapse the NHS, if we collapse the school system with class numbers, if we have a housing shortage, that's not helping the people coming in. It's not helping the people already here. So I think it's important, in my opinion, that, like I said before at the start, we have net zero immigration to let infrastructure catch up with the demands. Yeah, I think in terms of the school system, I think Labour will be an absolute disaster. So we touched upon class sizes. Labour are actually looking to tax the private schools within Skipton and Ripon out of business. They want to add more and more costs. And basically that will mean that children who can't afford to go to private school anymore, they will be added to the public school system, to the numbers. So we're talking about people coming in, immigration, and then adding a large chunk of the private sector into the class size as well. So that is a time bomb waiting to happen. If Labour get in, the school system will be under major threat, and the private schools situated within Skipton and Ripon will really, really struggle to stay open. And then if they close, there's going to be massive, massive demand for classroom space which can't be met. Reform UK are going to give tax breaks to the private schools, and we're going to encourage people who can afford to send their children to private schools to do so with financial incentives in order to take the pressure off the public school system.
Well, Toby Young of the Free Speech Union has got quite a lot to say on that subject, having set up a particular schools along a particular line where it's private, but the money has followed from public sector. No, you're absolutely right. I think also, and it's a subject maybe for another time, you're actually also talking about an ideological fight, hence why we get rid of private schools, where tax those and bring in, even though they have to adhere to the national curriculum and all the rest, sometimes even more so. Or they have there's also an option, but that's affecting them.
I think the private, yeah, I think the private school system is very, very important across different sectors. So education, NHS healthcare. We need the private sectors as a release valve, because otherwise the public institutions will crumble. So Reform UK will be looking to grow those institutions in those sectors.
Because what you're talking about by private, you're saying you're then wanting to unleash innovation and freedom, aren't you? To then solve these problems.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The private sector obviously have got the capability to help the country a lot in dealing with the demands that have been placed on the public sector or the needs by itself. It needs help from the private sector in lots of different fields.
Well, brilliant. I do commend you, because starting any or being part of any new grassroots party is demanding and takes your energy, and it also takes finance. So it's fantastic the way that you said all the leaflets you're already distributing. You've gone out of the gate from day one, and you obviously have a plan. So Simon, I'm going to end our time. If there's anything else you want to say, I think one of the most important things to say is, how can people reach you? How can they reach you? How can they get in contact with you?
Yeah, well, I built my own website. I built my own infrastructure for the campaign. So just a quick Google search, Reform UK Skipton or Reform UK Ripon, and my name will appear. You can also find me on the Prospective Parliamentary candidate section of the Reform UK website. And it'll give you links to contact me. So I think that would probably be the best way. If you want to ring me up, then you might have to go through head office and send them an email, or give them a phone call.
And if people wanted to get involved and help you, is that the way they can do that there as well? Go through your website etc.?
Yeah, definitely. Well, that's how we've grown our teams. So yeah, we started off with 3 members, I think, and now we're up to 10, 15. So well, all of them either got in contact with head office or they got in contact with
Brilliant.
me through my website. So yeah, either option is good.
Well, Simon, thank you. I do apologise. It's been a little bit choppy technologically, but thank you for joining me. And anyone listening, I hope that you found this really, really useful. And any campaign has to use social media to the best of their ability and to get the word out about what they wish to do, the achievements that they want to achieve, and to get their message out there. So thank you very much for joining us. Simon, I wish you all the best. I'd like to say, could we do this again at some point? I would be delighted to come and hear about your progress and what's happening.
Yeah, definitely, Mark. I think I've enjoyed my time here, and you've been very accommodating. So any future interviewees, yeah, I definitely recommend you give Mark a try.
That's very, very kind of you. So thank you very much indeed for joining us for this wonderful discussion. Politics in the UK is about to get very, very interesting over the next few months, to say the least. So I'm just going to play us out. I'll say goodbye to you, Simon, on the other side. But thank you very much for joining us.